39a, I believe, right? Right towards the bottom. Okay. If you know the fourth chapter of Leviticus by heart, of Vayikra by heart, it's much easier. If not, hold tight. Okay, so we discussed in the Mishnah the different blood applications that are essential. Now, we pointed out that there's a difference between the blood applications on the inner altar and the outer altar. There are 5 sacrifices. I believe that the blood is sprinkled on the inner altar. There, all of them have to be placed on the altar to get atonement, as opposed to the outer altar, where even if you do 1 or 2 out of 4, it'll be good. The inner altar is different. So, on that, the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanon va'asa kasher asa. So, in the 4th chapter of Vayikra, I think that 2 of the offerings are discussed. One in the beginning of the chapter, and one at the end of the chapter. So, at the end of the chapter, in the 20th verse, the Torah says, "Va'asa kasher asa." So it seems to repeat everything. It says you should do to the bull, kasher asa laparachatas, just like you do to the parachatas. So ken yasa lo, and we're going to interpret this verse. It sort of summarizes everything at the end. It says, and you should do like you did to that bull. Va'asa kasher asa. So maba lomod. What's it coming to teach me? Lichpol b'haza also, to teach me about the sprinkling. It repeated that you should do the sprinkling like I told you. For what reason? To teach you that that you have to do all the sprinklings, and if not, it's like you did nothing. Meaning, just to teach you to do 7 sprinklings, and we know that already. It already told us that by that sacrifice. However, it repeats itself to tell you what? To tell you that you have to sprinkle them, and if not, you did nothing. Ainli ella matan sheva shema'akvos bechol makom. Maybe that's true by offerings that require 7 sprinklings, which is the one that we're talking about. Which two is it? I think the beginning of the chapter talks about the bull that the Kohen Gadol brings when he errs. He makes an erroneous ruling, and everyone follows him. Most people follow him. That's one. I think the end of the chapter discusses the communal bull offering that that if most of the Jewish people sin, if most of them sin, then he has to bring the offering. So maybe that's only true by the offerings that you have to do 7 sprinklings, but an offering that has 4 sprinklings, 4 applications onto the altar. How do you know that all 4 of those on the inner altar are essential? If you miss one, it's like you did nothing. Talmud Lomar, Ken Yaseh Lepar. So it says Ken Yaseh Lepar. Sorry, Talmud Lomar Ken Yaseh, and you should similarly do. Those words Ken Yaseh teach you that that it comes to include even not only things that require 7 applications onto the altar, but even ones that require 4. If you miss one of them, so then it's a 0. You have to do all 4 of them. Lipar, another extra word there, to the bull. That comes to include Zeh Par Yom Kippurim. We'll explain more later. To come to teach you that the bull of the Yom Kippur bull offering is going to have the same halachas. We'll see exactly for what soon. Turning the page. Kasher asa lepar. You should do just like you should do similar to the bull. What's that referring to? Zeh Par Kohen Mashiach. That's referring to the par that the Kohen Gadol has to bring. And hachatos, the sin offering, is elu seire avodas kochavim. This is referring to the different to the offering that one brings when they commit an error regarding avodah zarah, when they commit a transgression regarding avodah zarah. So for that they have to bring a special ram. So fine. So this verse at the end of the the 4th chapter of Vayikra comes to include a whole number of different offerings. So Yachol Shani Marba Av Seire Haragolim Usir Roshei Chadashim. So once I'm expanding to not just bulls, but to other animals, such as a seir of Avodah Zarah, the how do they translate a ram, right? The seir is a ram, right? The he-goat. I was confused. The rams and he-goats. The he-goats, okay. The he-goats. So just like you're expanding to the he-goats of Avodah Zarah, so too, maybe you want to say that there should be similar rules and applications and things that if you don't do it, it's like a zero, even by the he-goats of the 3 holidays or of the Rosh Chodesh offerings. Talmud Lomar lo, no, to it, meaning only it, not including the other offerings. Okay, so now you included a bunch of offerings and you excluded a bunch of offerings. How did you know to include a number of offerings, and how did you know to exclude a bunch of offerings? How did you choose? What did you see that you're going to include the part of the bull of the Kohen Gadol and the he-goat of idol worship, and you excluded the sacrifices of Rosh Chodesh and of the 3 holidays? So Achar Shariba Kasav Umiyet. So Achar Shariba Kasav Umiyet. After the verse includes things and excludes things. So Mar Benias Elush Mechapran Alaveros Mitzvahs Yadua. Umotzi Anias Elush Ein Mechapran Alaveros Mitzvahs Yadua. I'm going to include the offerings that deal with Averos that are much more well known than Averos that are much less well known. Meaning that the other offerings, Avodah Zarah, that's much more known. A person does Avodah Zarah, or most of the congregation does Avodah Zarah, so you have to bring an offering. A korban chatas, the person has to bring an offering. But we learned in the beginning of Shavuos, the first Mishnah, that the offerings brought on Rosh Chodesh and the ones brought on the 3 holidays. So, at least according to some opinions over there, it's referring to the person who went into the temple in a state of impurity and never knew about it. He never knew about it, and for him, we bring an offering to atone for that he shouldn't get punished. So those offerings are, so to speak, not known because they're specifically brought for people that don't even know that they did something wrong. It's not that they did something wrong and then they find out, oh my gosh, I did a sin inadvertently. It's for people that walked into the temple, they didn't know that they were impure at all, and they still don't know. And for them, we bring a Rosh Chodesh offering for them.
How do you know to bring it? You don't know.
Every month we bring it. For anybody that's happened to.
Oh, okay.
Automatic atonement.
So it's like an umbrella.
Yeah. Like an umbrella?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It covers every...
Correct. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Then in that verse still, the 20th verse of the 4th chapter, it says, V'chiper. So now, a person gets atoned for, Afal pi shelo sama. V'nislach, Afal pi shelo nasan shirai. So another qualification is, a person will get atonement for the sacrifices that are included in this verse, one that we just mentioned, even if he didn't do smicha, he didn't lean on the offering, and it says v'nislach, he'll get forgiven, even if he didn't pour the remnants, the remaining blood in the cup, onto the altar. So, umar ra'is lipsol behazaos ulahakshir besmicha v'shirayim. On the one hand, you told us if you don't do all the applications, it's like it's a zero. You don't get atonement. You have to do all the applications. And at the same time, you said that you are still going to get atoned for, even if you didn't do a leaning on the offering, and even if you didn't pour the remnant blood onto the altar. So what told you to include that qualification and exclude this qualification? They're both things that Torah says to do. Amris posil behazos. Look around. You look around. The blood applications are things that prevent atonement. If you don't apply blood, you don't get atonement. However, we never found that leaning on the offering or not pouring the blood onto the altar is something which, if you don't do it, it's going to prevent atonement. So in this case, it's going to follow the general pattern that the things that we include are sprinkling of the blood. If you don't do that, then you won't get atonement. And if you don't do the other requirements, such as leaning or pouring the blood onto the altar, So that is not the right thing to do, but a person will still get atonement. Okay. Yeah.
People actually pour their own. This is always the way.
So you have a vessel, in the vessel is blood. You're applying 4, 7, 1, whatever it is, onto the inner altar, the outer altar, and now there's blood that's remaining in the cup. The cup. Yeah.
This is
not clear.
It's not clear. You're in front of the temple where okay.
After the slaughtering, I don't know if anybody else can do anything. At the end of the day, the slaughtering, interestingly enough, the lighting of the menorah, the lighting of the menorah, I think could be done by a non-Kohen. However, the setting up of the menorah can only be done by the Kohen. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I guess we'll say that for Hanukkah. Fine. So, Amar Mar, now we're going to go back and analyze this. So now, we just said, Eini elamatan sheva shema akvos b'chol makom. We mentioned earlier that at one point we said maybe this section in the 4th chapter of Vayikra is only talking about the offering that you have to do 7 applications. So maybe only 7 applications. Yeah, it's talking about the bull that we bring when most of the congregation did something that was erroneous, like from Horios, those things. So at the end, it seems to repeat itself. So, but there, maybe the applications that if you don't do them, you don't get atonement, are only referring to the 7 applications. And the Gemara asked, how about when you have to do 4 applications? And the Gemara brought the extra verse that taught us that even when you have to apply 4 applications on the inner altar, they're all going to be necessary to get atonement. But at one point we asked, maybe Amar Ein Matan Sheva Shema'akvos B'chol Makom. The Gemara asked, maybe only 7 applications, which are in general an absolute necessity. So where else do we have 7 applications that are an absolute necessity? Where is that? So Heicha. So remembering 2 cases. Amar Rav Papa B'Para U'B'Negai. By the Para Aduma, it says Zos Chukas HaPara, that there's also 7 applications. And because the Torah starts off the session with a chukah, if this is the law, meaning there's no leeway, that means that you have to do everything that it says there to get atonement. And that one of the things is sprinkling 7 times. Other places it says Zos Tia Torah HaMitzorah. This will be the laws of the Mitzorah. The Mitzorah, he also has you have to sprinkle 7 times for the Mitzorah. The word Tia, it will be, means it has to be. There's no way out. It has to be. So those are 2 examples where you have to do 7 applications, and it's an absolute necessity. To which the Gemara asked, how do you know that 4 applications is also an absolute necessity? To which the Gemara brought a puzzle. Fine. Now, Amar of Papa, the Para. So, sorry. Amar of Papa, the Para U'B'Negan. Fine. Matan Arba Minayin. The Bryce told us earlier. How do I know that 4 applications is absolutely essential? Remember, only the 4 applications on the inner altar, not the outer altar. So, are absolutely essential. Tamlomer, Kein Yasa. When the verse repeated itself and it said Kein Yasa, you should do like this. That came to include that the fact that it repeated it taught you that the 4 applications are absolutely essential. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Now, Ma'ishna Matan Sheva Dechsivan Ukfelan Matan Arba Nami Ksivi Ukfelan. So the 7 applications, how do you know that they're absolutely essential? Because in that verse, it repeated itself and said you should do like this. Now, it already told you what to do. The fact that it repeated it taught you that it's absolutely essential. How do you know that the 4 applications are absolutely essential? So really, we're just using that verse in the 20th verse in the 4th chapter, when it says, and you should do like this, comes to include all the offerings that verse included. it's now referring to, I think, the seventh pasuk in the fourth chapter. It internally repeats itself also. It says there, 1 second. Yeah. One second. Yeah, that's all. That's all Gemara is asking. The Gemara is asking that at one point, the Gemara wanted to exclude. It only wanted that the 7 applications should be absolutely essential, but the 4 applications not. The Gemara asked, why would you split that? The same place the 7 applications from is the same exact pasuk that taught you that the 4 applications are essential. The fact that Torah repeated itself told you that all the things mentioned are essential. So whether it's referring to the 7 applications or the 4 applications, it was the same word at the end, Kein Yasa. So at one point we wanted to split it. You wanted to say that only 7 are essential and 4 are not essential. So why would you do that? It's the same verse that tells you that the 7 are essential. It's the same one that tells you that the 4 are essential. So says you're right. Rabbi Yomi lo nitzcha el Reb Shimon. We're going to see from Reb Shimon that he's not going to use that end of the verse to teach you certain halachos. And since he's not going to use these words, Kein Yasa, so you would not have known it if not for the Gemara telling us that. So what did Reb Shimon say? The Tanya. So Reb Shimon says that Lemala Omer, it says in the 7th verse there in the 4th chapter that you should put the blood onto the karanos. And he understands it. Yeah, so the karanos, that's 2. You should put it on 2 parts of the altar, 2 horns of the altar. And Lamata Omer Karen, and later on in the 18th verse, it says you should also put it onto the altar. So it says 2 over there, it says 2 over here. So you know that you should put 4 blood applications onto the altar. Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eino Tzarech, you don't need those words, Karnos and Karnos, to teach you 4, because it already says Harehu Omer. It says already in the Harehu Omer Ba'ohel Moed, Al Kol Omer Ba'ohel Moed. It says in the 18th verse that you should put the blood onto the altar, and it says the things that are in the Ohel Moed. So whatever is done in the Ohel Moed, you should I'll call Amr Bohel Moed. Whatever is done in the Ohel Moed, what's something which is done in the tent of meeting? It is the blood applications. Rashi points out that this Ohel Moed is extra, because it already says that you should do the blood applications before God, teaching you that before God here means by the inner altar. The fact that it says Ohel Moed is extra, so to teach you that everything in the tent of meeting has to be, you have to apply the blood to, meaning all parts of the altar, all 4 parts, you have to do the application. So the extra word Ohel Moed teaches you that the whole altar you have to apply the blood applications to, all four sides. You have to apply to all 4 of them. So you don't need the verse to teach you 2 plus 2 to get you to 4. The extra word Ohel Moed teaches you that you'll have to do 4 applications, because every horn, every corner of the altar is also something which is within the tent of meeting, and therefore they all need to have a blood application on them. So what do you see though? You see from Rabbi Shimon that so you see from Rabbi Shimon that he needs that the verse itself tells you 2 corners, and another verse tells you 2. The fact that the second verse repeated something, like the word Ohel Moed, does not teach you 4 applications. So too by our case, when the 20th verse repeats that you should do, just like you did to this, you should also do to that, that repetition is not going to include something for you. Because we find in the same chapter, when in the 18th verse, it repeated something, which Rabbi Yehuda used to teach you all 4 applications. According to Rabbi Shimon, he didn't use that. So it makes sense that according to him, you wouldn't know necessarily that by the verse saying Kein Yasa, you wouldn't know that it's including the 4 applications, because he needs a special. He has another way to derive 4 applications. Fine. So basically, at the end of the day, you have the 4th chapter of Vayikra. It's referring to actually only 2 offerings, but the 20th verse seems to be repetitive, which it comes to include many other offerings. At the end it says you should do similarly. To come to tell you that whatever applies by the offerings that are listed in the parsha will apply to the other ones that we are including. Specifically, that they need 4 applications. If you don't have 4, then it will not atone for you. And that's learned out of the pasuk Kein Yasa. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda, though, Rabbi Yehuda we just brought parenthetically because we needed to bring Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon learned that you have to have 4 applications because it said Karnos 2 plus Karnos 2. Rabbi Yehuda learned you have to have 4 applications because it says Ba'ohal Moed, and the word tent of meeting is extra to teach you all parts of the altar that are in the tent of meeting, which means all parts of the altar need applications. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, what do you do with the verse Kein Yasa? Our verse that we've been using to teach you 4 applications, what does Rabbi Yehuda do with that verse? Mai avidlei, mi ba'ilei lechidetanya. We need it for the following brisa. What does the following brisa teach us? Lefi shelo lamadu lepar yom kippurim lesmicha v'shiari adam minayin. We didn't learn about the bull on Yom Kippur needing smicha, leaning on it, and needing one to pour the blood onto the altar. How do I know that I need to do that? Talmud Omer Kein Yasa, because the verse says Kein Yasa to teach you that the bull on Yom Kippur that the Kohen Gadol brings on the inner altar, it requires smicha, leaning on it, and shirayim, the leftover blood has to be poured onto the altar. As the Gemara, Ulepar Yom Kippurim lo lamadnu. We didn't reference the bull of Yom Kippur. What do you mean? One of the things that verse included was ha'amras lapar, zeh Yom Kippurim. When it repeated the word to the bull, that bull was a reference to the bull of Yom Kippur. So why do you have to have a new verse, Kein Yasa, to teach me that the bull on Yom Kippur requires smicha and shirayim, requires leaning and pouring the remnant blood onto the altar? In the verse itself, it already said the word lapar. Lapar to the bull was extra. The extra word to the bull was already referring to the bull of Yom Kippur. So you don't need Kein Yasa to teach you that we're referring to the bull of Yom Kippur. Rather, you already have the word lapar to teach you that. Says the Gemara, no, you would have thought if it only had the word lapar, you would have thought it's referring to the Yom Kippur bull. However, it's referring to only the services that are absolutely essential. But you would have thought that other services that are not essential, such as leaning or pouring the blood, you would have thought that is not essential for the Yom Kippur offering. Kamash Malon, that when we compare the 2 sections, it's not only comparing it for the service that's essential, but it's also comparing it even for the non-essential services to teach you that you have to lean on the animal and pour the remnant blood, even by the bull of Yom Kippur. Don't think that the comparison of our section of the bull that the congregation brings when they make an error, which in that section there are extra words, and one of the extra words is teaching you about the bull on Yom Kippur. Don't think that the comparison is a very limited comparison, which is only about the essential services. To that, Rabbi Yehuda says the word Kein Yasa teaches you that even the non-essential services are also taught, and therefore we learn from here that the bull on Yom Kippur, you have to also lean on it, and you have to pour the remnants onto the altar. Now, Rabbi Shimon, who learned 4 applications, because it said the word karnos twice, horns and horns, right? You 4 horns, which means the 4 corners. What does he do with the word ohel moed? Rabbi Shimon, the ohel moed, my avidlei. It comes to teach you. It comes to teach you. Erase the next 2 words. Hayib ohel moed, my avidlei. Mi ba'ilei. Interesting. Shim nifchasa tikra shel heichal lo hayamaza. If the roof of the heichal got peeled off, got breached, that's a good word, got breached, then you cannot do the sprinkling. Interesting. Special requirement for the roof of the Heichel, of the Holy of Holies, not to be breached. Yeah. Why? Because Ohel Moed, it's a tent of meeting. What's a tent? Something which covers you. Keeps you warm. Something which covers you. So if the roof is breached, you can't call it an Ohel anymore. It's not called a tent. So, yeah. Now, that's all good from Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda, who uses the word Ohel Moed already for something else, for 4 applications, how does he know this? The Idach Me'asher. And the word that is extra, teaches you if it's not roofing you, if it's not covering you, then you cannot sprinkle the blood, because it's not called doing it in a tent of meeting. The Idach, what does Rabbi Shimon do with the word Me'asher? Asher lo darish. He doesn't interpret the word Asher. You're thinking of the ceiling here on Simple Torah.
What?
What do you mean? There's a hole in it?
We had prayer events.
You had what?
Prayer events.
The prayer event. Meaning?
It was a kind of a dome ceiling.
Uh-huh.
It was a Latin plaster.
Okay.
There were patches where there was no plaster.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Interesting. So, okay, he doesn't interpret the word darish. Fine. Abai Omer, the Rabbi Yehuda Nami Itzrich. For Rabbi Yehuda, you also need even though Rabbi Yehuda uses the words Ohel Moed, but you still need according to Rabbi Yehuda, you also need to interpret this. Why? So matan arbanami lo tisakev kamashmon. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you also need, I think, the verses Kenyasa to teach you that you would have thought that when we include the other offerings, let's say for leaning or for pouring the remnant blood, so you would have thought that just like those things, even though it says Kenyasa, it repeats it, but those things are not essential. So you would have thought that just like those are not essential, maybe you would have thought that the 4 applications that are also repeated to include other offerings are not essential either. Kamash Malan, that no. We had to specifically teach you that the 4 applications differ than the other applications, and that these it had to repeat itself to teach you that they are absolutely essential, as opposed to the leaning of the animal or the pouring of the remnant blood onto the altar. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fine. Now we said that this 20th verse in Vayikra, in the 4th chapter, says lepar, and lepar to the bull is an extra word. That pasuk seems to be a little bit extra. It's just telling you should do what you did already. So, well, you told me to do it once. I know it already. So lepar to the bull comes to include the bull of Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara, for which halach are you teaching me that? Ila akev. If you want to tell me that it's coming to teach me. It's coming to teach me that the blood applications are totally essential. I know that already. Why? Shita chukaksiv. They're in, I think, Parshat Acharemos in the 16th chapter of Vayikra. It says, "V'haisa zos lachem lichukas olam." This is an absolute statute. Chuka. You have to do this. It says the word chuka. There's no way out. So we know already that the laws regarding the bull on Yom Kippur are absolute necessities. So what's this lapar teaching me here? You're right. We don't really need it, but we need it for the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar, kik siva chuka. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda learns that there in the whole section talking about Yom Kippur, it says the word chuka. It's like an absolute law. There's no wiggle room. What is that referring to? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's referring to something very specific, to which we need our verse to teach you that even the blood applications are going to be absolutely essential. What is that teaching you? What is that referring to over there? According to Rabbi Yehuda, Kik siva chuka advarim hanasim the big day lavan b'fnim shem hiktim ma'isa lechaveiro lo asa v'lo klum. According to Rabbi Yehuda, when you're wearing your white garments in the holy of right, you couldn't bring golden because it reminded you of the golden calf. So you're wearing the white garments in the holy of holies, and there are certain procedures that you have to do. Let's say you did one of them before the other. So you have to bring the incense, and you have to bring the incense, and you have to sprinkle the blood. And there's an order of how to do things. You do X before Y. Let's say you switch the order. Does that count? So no, it says chukas. It says you have to do it in this order. When in the Holy of Holies, it has to be done in a certain order. That's what the word chukas is coming to tell you. Shehim hiktim ma'isa lechaveiro lo asa v'lo klum. If you switch the order, and let's say you did one application before the incense or the other way around, that's going to be a zero. It has to be in the exact order. Aval devarim hanasin the big day lavan b'chutz. But when you're wearing the white garment outside of the Holy of Holies, hiktim ma'isa lechaveiro masha asa asu. Even if you switch the order, what you did is done. At the end of the day, when you're outside the Holy of Holies, even if you reverse the order of your different things that you have to do, it still counts. So now, Ema midikisidron lo ma'akvi hazaos nami lo ma'akvi, from the fact that the order is not an absolute necessity when you're outside the Holy of Holies, maybe you would have thought that the blood application is also not an absolute necessity. Kamashma, our verse tells you, Kasher Tziva, to teach you, Kenyasa, to teach you that no, even though certain things are not absolute necessities, like the order, if you switch the order outside the Holy of Holies, however, the blood applications on the inner altar are absolute necessities, and you have to do all four of them.
On the inside, you could do things in the exact order.
Right.
On the outside, you can get away with it.
Right.
Inside is in private. Outside is in public.
Interesting. Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess inside's more holy. Yeah. No, here's a. Yeah. What to do it where? Outside. Keep everyone. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Now, Maskif Law Rav Papa. Rav Papa has a question. Umi matis omres hachi. What exactly is going on? Yeah. So Rav Papa is going on Rabbi Yehuda, who just said that, who just told us that the blood application is learned that is an absolute necessity from here. So Rav Papa is asking, the Brisa says there in Parshas Acharemos that deals with the Yom Kippur services. What does it say? It says Ve'chila mechaper es hakodesh. When you finish, so then you're going to gain atonement. Okay. So im kiper kila, if you the Rashi said that the verse is extra. It could have just said the next words about bringing the he goat. What does it mean when you finish you get atonement? What is that referring to? So it says the Gemara that im kiper kila, the im lo kiper lo kila, divrei Rabbi Akiva, some sort of Yehuda. Okay, divrei Rabbi Akiva. That only when you atone, when you finish your atonement, are you atoned for. So what's that referring to? It's referring to the atonement by everywhere else. What's the atonement everywhere else? The blood application. So whether it's the 7 sprinklings or the 4 sprinklings, at the end of the day, the blood application, when you finish that, you get atonement. So im kiper kila, lo kiper lo kila. If you don't do all of the applications, then you don't get atoned for. Div Rabbi Akiva. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda, mi pnei malo nemar im kila kiper ve'im lo kila lo kiper. Okay, so they add in Shim Chisa Achas Mikol Matanos Lo Asav Lo Klum. Why did it say this? Why did it say this? It's coming to teach you. 1 second. Rabbi Kiva tells you that you have to apply the blood, and therefore, yeah. Meaning, according to Rabbi Kiva, it tells you have to apply the blood. Whatever atonement means everywhere else, which means the application of the blood, then you get atoned for, even though you didn't pour the remnant blood onto the altar. But as long as you do your application of the blood, even if you didn't pour the rest of the blood, you still get atoned for. That's Rabbi Kiva. Only Rabbi Yehuda, Mipnei Malo Namar in Kila Keeper. Why didn't it say in Kila Keeper, Veim Lo Kila Lo Keeper? Only if you do this, you get atonement, and if not, you don't get atonement. Why didn't it say it? How do they read it? 20. Okay, and what does Rabbi Yehuda say? Ipnei malo namar in kila keeper ve'im lo kila lo keeper. Sounds like it's coming to teach you. It's going to teach you this idea that if you missed one of the applications, so then it doesn't give you atonement. You have to do all the applications. So what do you see? You learn, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you learn all the applications from here. From the fact that it said there, b'chila v'chiper, you learn that the applications are an absolute necessity. So it says Rav Papa, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you just told me that you needed our verse in the 4th chapter to teach you that the blood applications of the bull on Yom Kippur are absolutely essential. It sounds like you could learn it locally in the section of Yom Kippur itself. It says b'chila v'chiper to teach you that you have to finish all the applications, and if not, then it's not going to atone. No, it's asking something else. No, it's like this. Not all, according to Rabbi Yehuda, not only you have to do all the blood application, you have to do everything, even the pouring of the remnant blood onto the altar. You have to complete everything. Only then you'll get atonement. Meaning, even the remnant blood has to be poured onto the altar, and if you don't do that, then you won't get atonement. However, Rabbi Yehuda just told us that you only have to do the essential applications, but the pouring of the blood is not something which is going to be essential. I think that's a question, no? Yeah, that's the question. Do you have to pour the remnant blood onto the altar? Is that something which is going to prevent your atonement or not? It sounds like we have a contradiction within Rabbi Yehuda. To that, Amar Rav Papa, the one who asked, has the answer. Amar Rav Papa, lo nitzach ela. Really, we need this comparison of the bull to Yom Kippur to the bull that's brought when most of the congregation committed an aveira. That verse in the 4th chapter of Vayikra, the 20th verse there, we need it to tell us lapar to compare the two sections. The bull that's brought when most of the congregation commits an error. We're comparing that to the bull on Yom Kippur for another halacha. Which halacha is that? Ella le'ezdam u'tvila. We need to teach you that the bull of the Kohen is going to have this similar laws to the bull of the congregation, of the one that was brought when the congregation errs. Specifically, that you have to, when you put your finger in, you have to dip your finger in. You have to dip your finger in. V'dam u'betvila, that you have to dip your finger in, and let's see, as dam u'betvila, but you have to follow the same pattern. However, they dip their finger in over there and they apply it. You have to do it here also. That's according to Rav Papa, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah. According to Amar Achabar Yaakov Lenitzcha Lahachshir Amin Sheba Etzba, you need to specifically use the Amin Sheba Etzba, which the ring finger? Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Amin Shabbat's, but that it's telling you that even if you have a blister on your finger, it's okay. It's not considered a chatzitza. It's not an interposition. Even if you have a blister on your finger, that's fine. And bedam, sheyehei bedam shir tefila miikara. So he says that it's coming to teach you that even a blister on your finger is okay. It's not considered a chatzitza, an interposition between when you dip your finger in and there's a blister on it. That's fine. That's not considered a problem. Similarly, when you dip your finger in, it has to be that when the vessel received the blood, it had all the amount right there and then. Meaning, you can't have half of the amount you need in two vessels and combine it into one vessel. Right? So let's say you needed, I don't know, an ounce of blood. When you receive the blood, it has to be the full ounce that you receive. You can't receive a half an ounce in two receptacles and then combine them. So that's what we need that verse to teach us. And we're going to have to continue on Shabbos Kodesh.
And that too.
Second line.